Hello, it's Sonia Berthasell joining remotely. If you could promote me to a panelist, that would be awesome.
Hi, Sonia Bertrand.
Hi, I don't know how to do that
We do see you, so you're probably,
Cool. Okay, great.
but we don't see you. We just see your black screen
with your name.
because your camera's off.
Hi, Sonia. Hi, Sonia.
Hi,
Hey everyone, how's it going?
good. How are you?
I am pretty great and also haven't slept very much. Both of those things simultaneously true. This is my new friend. Lardy, come here.
Oh, hi, sweetie.
New puppy, just acquired. All right, and
What?
and pardon me while we're in transition. I need to help him up some stairs, and then I will be part of this meeting.
All right.
Hey, how's it going? Do you want to wait for, oh, I'm talking and talking and talking.
Hey, there's Michael.
Hi. Do we want to wait for Sonia to get situated and then I'll start recording?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay, perfect. I'll do that as soon as she reappears.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Hello,
I'm Summer. Nice to meet you.
pleasure.
I'm Matt. We've met, but I don't know if you remember.
I do. You'll have to forgive if I'm not terribly chatty. I have a touch of a headache.
I hope you feel better soon. And
I,
that's
th-
all right.
I think I'm just really bad at hydrating.
Oh,
Oh,
Definitely got to make sure that I drink more water.
I checked my email, so I don't know if we're waiting for anyone else, but my proposal would be that we could jump in and then we can welcome other folks as they join. I think tonight is a good night to end our meeting on time because it is Passover, and so we want to be mindful of trying to wrap up the meeting before sunset. Does everyone feel okay about that? Great. So on tonight's agenda, actually is Chief Lowe there in the room?
No.
no.
Okay. I am expecting him to join the meeting. I had a message from Lori that she wasn't able to make it, but hope Chief Lowe would join in her place. So hopefully he'll be able to join us as we continue on. But let's jump right in. The first and most important item on our agenda tonight was an opportunity to really dig into and have some conversation around the former ad hoc DEIB recommendations report. And so Malcolm, I know, was a member of the ad hoc DEIB committee back in 2020 and 2021. And I had an opportunity to look through this pretty great and extensive report and reflect on what has already happened, the formation of this committee being among those things, and also some questions that I had about what might be a real cool opportunity for this group to get into next. And so did other folks have a chance to, yep, I see Michael's nodding and I can't see other folks. So I'm gonna assume that we're good. And I hope that folks who are present in the room can do some backseat facilitating for me today, because it's a little bit harder for me to moderate over Zoom. So please, let's kind of in an egalitarian way run today's meeting and just get going with maybe some conversation around what we noticed reading and reflecting on this report, and what we can celebrate and what the next steps would be in proposing to council how they might continue to make Orono a place that really prioritizes DEIB.
can I ask a question first? Is there a permanent DEIB committee now?
Yeah,
That has been a, okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's all.
A year ago,
Okay.
April. So this is like
Okay.
our anniversary month of having 1 year of existence as a committee of the town council.
Yes. Yep, so this group is that. This now exists, and there is also a staff working group that similarly sort of works internally amongst staff to be prioritizing these issues to a certain degree. And so normally Lori Cartier from the library serves on this committee as well, and is sort of a liaison to make sure there's information flow between staff and this group, volunteer group. Great question.
I was thinking back over the year, and you know, the forming of, okay, what all are we, what are we about, what can we do, who's here, who should be here, and through the year, it's just a lot, as you would expect in the first year of a new committee. So the people who are through threads are Michael, myself, Gabe, and Dan. And I love that we have new people potentially to onboard after tonight. So when we started in April, it was kind of like all white faces except for one. We're like, wow, is that a good ratio for a group that's purpose was called into being after 2020 and kind of trying to reckon with racial justice in towns and cities across the country. And we said, well, no, that's not our preferable ratio, but doggone it, we're gonna start somewhere. And what we're seeing and what we're hoping to see is that by doing things, others will be attracted to do things as well that fit with the DEIB committee. And the overall composition will become both empowered and multiracial. So that is one thing that I see in process from the past year. Rereading the 2021 report, what stood out to me the most was the name. What was called for in the report had the letters JEDI for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And then what the council commissioned 2 years later, what came into being was DEIB, Diversity and Equity and Inclusion and Belonging. And so unless it's too far afield, I actually found a reading by happenstance the other day that explains where that acronym came from, because I didn't know. And I found it in Brene Brown's work. Brene Brown is like, works in leadership and human awareness and emotions. So belonging is a big word. And she says belonging and love is very key. Insecurity about belonging, or rather belonging uncertainty, is really detrimental. And so here's the quote where she and her research group defined DEIB. I didn't know where that came from, but apparently they came up with it in the Dare to Lead work. We talk a lot about belonging as a critical component of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. We actually call it DEIB to include belonging in our work. And our organization's position statement is called our belonging statement. Why? Because people should feel a strong sense of belonging in an organization and shape the culture through representation, co-creation, influence, and that inextricable, unnameable spiritual connection that is shared humanity. And her very next thing in this book is about disconnection, the things that get in the way of belonging. So I was led to this passage here, thinking about what is structural about our DEIB committee that could contribute to such a thing as belonging over time. So this is the barrier to belonging, and it's called disconnection. And the researcher here sees disconnections as normative and inevitable in relationships. They occur when one person misunderstands, invalidates, excludes, humiliates, or injures the other person in some way. Acute disconnections occur frequently in all relationships. If they can be addressed and reworked, they are not problematic. In fact, they become places of enormous growth. When an injured person, particularly one who has less power, can represent their experience of disconnection or pain to the more powerful person and be responded to with interest or concern, the less powerful hurt person has a sense of mattering, of having an effect on the other. This strengthens connection, as well as a sense of relational competence. So then they're trying to put that in a framework of unequal power structures, which brings us to where we are in modern society overall. But I was thinking about this group even over 1 year with lots of flux, having a structural role of listening long enough and amplifying enough so that somebody who had something to say in the process of claiming their own belonging and mattering could have a place in the system that would hold that with them. So the clearest way we did that was from September to December, hearing what was in the town of Orono that was not going well, according to some of the Penobscot tribal folks, and sticking with that matter until it mattered to more people. And I think that took us till Michael, have we done anything on it since January? But it was probably the most pronounced thing in our year. First year. By that, I mean the signage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that reflection, Malcolm. That's really feels sort of hopeful and good for me to hear that, and I just really appreciate it. And I'm also, I guess, reflecting back now on our year together and another place where it was different than that, because you're naming this sense of belonging that is that's really related to justice in a clear way. But I also want to celebrate that we've had some really beautiful moments of building a sort of active sense of welcome, and the potluck that was Dias de los Muertos that really brought a lot of people together in celebration of a holiday that's important to some of our community members felt really amazing to me as another activity that this group did over the course of the past year.
I feel like we've really gotten to a place where we've been able to like kind of offer, I feel like, what we wanted to this community. I feel like we kind of started off where we were kind of unsure of kind of what that kind of structural sense looks like, and so I feel like it's it's really rewarding, personally at least, to see that we've kind of been able to really learn how to stand on our own two legs, and we're even in the influx of members that we're seeing kind of the consistent passion, and I think that that really works to that sense of belonging because it gives people the kind of motivational basis for wanting to keep something like this going.
I have a question, which is there any practice within the committee of almost like a book club, where the committee is learning together about DIB things and going through processes together? Because so much of this is about continuing to do our own work, and we all have infinite work to do. We'll never get it done in our lifetimes. And how could we support each other in that, which can then have ripple effects out?
That hasn't yet been a thing and could totally be a thing.
Right?
I would be just concerned kind of bureaucratically about like the meeting laws around that because I know that there's that's been something that we've butted heads into just here and there on little things.
Yeah.
I also would worry about kind of the time commitment because this is a volunteer based.
I think that I would imagine it would be totally fine and great for this group or a subset thereof. I don't think it would need to be mandatory for you, Michael, or for any other committee member for whom it's like that's not gonna work in my life. But I think there'd be opportunity for it, and it doesn't need to. Not all meetings need to be like recorded and on Zoom and like this one is. As long as they're noticed, there's the it's I think not prohibitive to set up a little book club moment.
Yeah, I wasn't sure of the logistics. I just know that I feel like things can get really strange when it comes to little things, but then other times it doesn't.
So, I'm new to all this and I really enjoyed reading through the report that you guys put together. Was it 2020?
Yeah. So a little backstory on that. This group didn't exactly put it together. It was there was an ad hoc process in that resulted in this report written in 2021 that that was like a predecessor to this group existing. And the number one recommendation of that group, which met 4 times, was that there should be an ongoing committee. And so that's where this group came from, is the town council was like, okay, we will follow that first recommendation. And they did, and that's where this group came from. So there's some, but not a lot of overlap in membership between committees. We can't take credit for their great work, but we are glad it happened. And there was, so we're kind of like looking back and wanting to learn from sort of past thinking and expertise around this issue, and also reflect on where we've been. Does that help set some context, Matt?
Does, and I just was curious about the thoughts of the people who are on this committee about, yeah, you remember too, about that list of 10. What do you guys think of that list of 10 and how do you feel about it? Are there any points that are now you feel different, or not you because we didn't put it together, but I'm just curious what you think of that list and how you feel about it and what stood out to you and what is maybe a priority for you. I'm just curious.
Good. So as
Or is it, or it should be ignored now?
list of 10 recommendations, those were recommendations made
Yep.
to the town. The charge from the town to the committee came back, I think there were 4 type items on it. But this is a good list still. I feel like
Yeah.
1 through 10 to continue to be a group kind of within the structure saying to us as a town overall, how are we doing on these things?
Yeah.
So if we took stock, which we get to do kind of in a public record fashion tonight. Number 1, there's something like a Jedi board that exists now. You've got this.
Mhm.
Number 2, training sessions required annually by town employees, volunteers, representatives, officials, and RSU officials. So that's broader than just town staff, but if we look at progress on number 2, I think the last year includes staff work with the consultant. And if somebody here has an update, even though Lori couldn't be here and Chief Lau isn't here yet, they could kind of say point in time that we're at with that. Any of you know from council?
So I know that the town council doesn't yet have this for ourselves internally, and this was a great flag for me that that is perhaps a good thing to do. But one suggestion I have for our process tonight is there are going to be some of these that are our sort of answer to how are we doing on that is going to be, well, we need to sort of touch base with staff folks to learn a little more. And so I wonder if someone could take some notes and make a list of the questions that we want to follow up with Lori about, or Chief Lowe if he's able to make it later. And then we can spend some time in our next meeting learning a little bit more about where we're at on those things. Does that seem like a good point of process?
Looks
Yeah.
great.
Awesome.
Has this made any, like done any research or made any recommendations on where that training would come from or who would be providing that training? Because that seems like a really big thing to me.
Oh, that down is something to ask.
We made one suggestion when it was particular to Wabanaki issues. And kind of steered inquiry toward Wabanaki Reach as people who are providing various kinds of learning opportunities and unlearning opportunities of inherited biases. Then there was a different moment where we were asked to like recommend or not the consultant that the town was looking at for staff. And we didn't meet in time to do that. Our meeting was after that was going to occur. But that was something we might do, is like vet or suggest some resources.
Yeah.
Is there a budget?
And although we didn't have time to meet and talk about that consultant, there was some feedback that came to me as liaison over email from this group. And so there was an opportunity for this group to provide sort of maybe not an ideal level, but a low level of feedback on that process. And if there had been any like, wait, hold the phone, we should revisit the consultant, I think council would have perhaps slowed down that process. But what we heard back at that time was from the folks who were able to reply over email was like, this person seems pretty legit and it's a good thing to do.
Is there a budget for that?
There was a budget for the consultant that was hired. And so that was an appropriation that the town council chose to make. This group does not have a budget at its disposal at this current moment in time.
But the town has chosen, at least in the past, to put DEIB training, annual training into the budget. Well, this last.
Yeah, or to pay for it in a way that's substantive out of general funds, one or the other. And I can't actually remember if it was a budgeted expense versus a use of flexible funds, but it is something that has been budgetarily prioritized through some mechanism.
Yes, Sarah. Sarah's here with us.
Hi. I'm Sarah Marks, and I was just gonna say also that it wasn't just like a one-time training. Like staff came to us and said, we really know we've done the one-time training and that's not enough. We want an ongoing consultant that would work with us. So Sonia, you might know more about how many times they've met but it's an ongoing consultation relationship throughout this year, right, Sonia?
She did a thumbs up.
Okay, I can't see this.
So has the annual training, which is mentioned on here, been dropped and it's just the consultant now, or is it both?
So I think we should add more details about this to the list of things to ask staff about, because I don't think that I personally have any more information to contribute here. Maybe others do, but in the interest of time, I'd suggest we maybe keep going on down our list and note that this is an important thing for this group to revisit.
All right, so
3 would go on that list of questions to ask and follow up. It's not just training, but systematically would the town and council assess diversity, equity, inclusion, and reviewing budget allocations, decision-making, and policy development. So the target is marginalized populations strategically have greater opportunity and access to services that will help them gain a sense of belonging and awareness. So that might be a reference to research itself. The 2021 Research instrument was a survey with massive participation. Like 250 is the number that stands out in my mind, that a lot of respondents took that survey and said what was important in terms of assessing things. I think that was just a hope that we would constantly be looking at how those outcomes showed in 2021, and are we getting better, or, you know, moving further away from where we want to be. We thought, I think number 4 comes in because we thought that UMaine could be a resource in moving in the direction of wisdom with the above things. UMaine has both a DEI table of lots of on-campus entities that touch on these issues, and also they have departmental expertise and all kinds of things. And Michael and Carlos are university students who, or were. Michael, what's your current?
I am currently not a university student. Unfortunately, my tangles with transferring credits has left it not quite the right time for me to return to academia.
So you can take credit for you and all the wonderful things you bring to the committee. But there might be other members of the committee who represent some university resources. Here it says support town gown inclusion, planning, and equity, as well as other efforts.
That grown, should that be grown, town grown or town gown?
Town gown meaning
It's like a
Like,
saying, town and gown.
I don't know.
grads who dress up in the hat and the
Oh.
gown.
Yeah, it's like a
Okay.
saying, yeah.
It
Sweet.
rhymes. Yeah.
I like it.
5, increase transparency of town governance for the community by creating equitable, inclusive practices that equitably communicate policies, procedures, visions, missions from all levels of town employees and departments. I feel like it was this past calendar year that the town went for transparency in a new way with lots of public meetings that no one attended, but also putting it in the Orono Observer and like really showing forth how the town is constituted and how the thing works. Was that this last year?
I think it aligns with a plurality, I think, of town councilors. And we're trying to become that.
Yeah.
We're still moving in that direction. So I would say that that is something that is important to a number of us individually. I can't speak for everybody.
It showed up again in our recommendations for process after the conflict over the signage, and in anticipation of future signage that would be better. We gave some recommendations which just kind of underline all of that number 5. Make it possible for more people to know what's going on and participate, and that's what transparency is for. Six. A lot of words. Human resources, okay. Pathways to attract, hire, and retain at all levels. Well, this past year has been kind of interesting because we have a senior leadership transition. And so the town manager process is, but not only that one, right? There have been other staff openings and turnover, and
Yeah.
so attracting, hiring, and retaining the diversity of folks.
Yeah.
Not just diversity of identity, but also diversity of economic background, diversity of abilities. Yeah, what are some good questions we could ask about number 6 to see, are we moving well along? What are some good questions to assess?
It seems like this could be added to the list to touch base with Lori about, hopefully at the next meeting or between then and now, about what are the town's current hiring policies and practices, and HR procedures around this, and just having, take the opportunity to review and think through if there are opportunities to strengthen that. I know there have been, to your point about us being in the sort of town manager search process, there have been some conversations, including with this group, about that. And so there could be an opportunity also for search chairs of that to report back to this committee at some point, or about how this was included in the process, and how they feel it went, and any lessons learned for the future, if there are opportunities to include the process to sort of hone similar processes going forward.
I think great opportunity you just said, Sonia, with using this committee as a chance to check back in with the search committee.
Mhm.
Penny King and I, she's been interested in coming, and I don't see her tonight. Maybe it didn't work out, but she and I were the two to represent the committee before, and I think she would be very interested, and I would too, in a second conversation. We'll miss Leah,
Yeah.
member
Yeah.
of the committee, Hakala, who gave good input in February as far as some things we might do to diminish bias. Penny and I were interested in specific cultural competency as well as commitment to multiplicitous Orono.
Cool.
I kind of have similar questions on this one to number 2 of just, what research is being done on who's offering these trainings, and like the community engagement 101 educational sessions, intercultural competency, skill development workshops. Like who's assessing and researching, who's offering those things?
It's a great question. And I think that in the past, it's probably often been town manager and town staff primarily doing that. But there might be opportunity for us to, again, that could be a sub question in what to chat with staff liaisons about in the future.
I would just say, if that was the case, that would not feel adequate to me. I would want to see much more diverse representation in who's offering the trainings, and also a certain level of competency where, like that you've specialized in really learning about this. Again, we all have infinite learning to go on this, and some people have spent a lot more time on it already.
Sonia, do you want me to say anything about the search process and what happened with feedback from this group?
Sure, go for it.
I don't know that I know everything, but I am one of the search chairs, and I know that feedback from this group was really useful and helpful. I think Leah led the information on that was given to us when council asked for recommendations about non-biased interviewing practices and things we should be sure to query our search firm around. And based on that recommendation, they came back. Sonia, was it all from Leah or was it from the whole group? I don't know, but
there were multiple folks who offered suggestions, so let's not get too particular about who said what.
So anyway, but from the group suggestions, we took those back to our consulting firm and had discussions, and specifically said, okay, what are we going to do around how we're interviewing and how we're reviewing candidates based on the recommendations from the DEIB group? And a lot of those were implemented. In particular, the one I remember was about listening interviews before we watched them was a really big recommendation that came as a mitigation of bias, not to actually watch video recordings first, but to listen first and to rate people on a rubric that you'd created with first just by listening before watching. So I know that one was included. Also, I don't know if that came from the DIB committee, but council made decisions about where we advertise the position, and there were conscious choices about advertising broadly, not just across the country, but also in professional associations that were affiliated. There was a Latino city managers and a Black city managers, and I'm not sure what else, that were decisions about how to advertise, right? That were informed from input that we wanted to advertise broadly and perhaps more broadly than had been done before on past searches. Sonia, am I forgetting another recommendation that came from this group? Those are the ones I remember.
That is what I am remembering at the moment too. And I'll say, as another person who's been part of the search process, I feel like that advice did make for a process that made for a better process. In particular, the recommendation to listen before watching, I sort of noticed some assumptions and judgments that I had within myself when I was then watching someone after listening. And so that opportunity to really like reflect on the content of what someone was saying before I knew what they looked like, I think was a really powerful tool that I was so glad was shared by this group and as part of that process.
And I guess I forgot, we also, the first level of reviews in writing before we got to the video level also were, I'm trying to think, identifying information was removed from resumes. So we didn't see names and we didn't have gendered pronouns and we didn't have those things at the whole first level of the search. I think was another recommendation that came from here and that was implemented with our search firm.
Yeah. Yeah, good updates. All right, being mindful of time, I'm gonna suggest we keep on going down this list. Are we on number 8? Oh no, we're on number 7. Create equitable systems to promote and recognize the value of diverse populations and businesses choosing, investing, and staying in Orono.
I'm not coming up with anything.
Yeah, I don't know that we've explicitly done any work around this, so it's good to remember that this is a recommendation and something to think more about. Number 8, provide strategic support to continue the efforts of reform made by the Orono Police and Fire Departments and EMS personnel. So to me, this feels like another one to add to the list of staff questions, but I'm curious if other folks have thoughts or reflections.
I would just like to add to this. It says mental health, but I'm curious how much trauma-informed response training is happening.
Great question. Number 9 is appropriately celebrate, reflect, and honor history, traditions, culture, and diversity in Orono, particularly of the Penobscot Nation and the Wabanaki tribal nations.
This is where we went backward before we went forward.
Yep.
Good.
Another
Sonia,
sort of, go ahead, Sarah.
There is, we haven't had any official response back from the Penobscot Nation as a council. And it is also true that there is a project going on in the basin right now, working on a park, and that I think originally a community member reached out to the Penobscot Nation, and then there was follow-up from our council chair after the nation had responded to that community member. So the response that came back from one staff member of the nation was that they were interested in talking about that park project and potentially working with Orono on that park project. And So that is the only interaction that I know of that's come to us at a council level. Staff may know of other interactions in between, but that was good to see that there was a request that had gone out and a positive response back from someone who was a staff member in their official staff capacity from the nation about working and partnering on what might happen in that park in the basin regarding Wabanaki ongoing presence, historic presence. Right, Sonia?
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Sarah. Yep, that all sounds accurate to me. And I think the one other thing that I'd add by way of reflection, and this is from the past year, reflecting on activities sort of tangential to this group, is the town council did partner, not with Penobscot, but with another Wabanaki community member on the Wabanaki Winter Celebration as a potluck theme, and that was a really beautiful opportunity to be celebrating culture of Wabanaki neighbors as well. So
Each one of those potlucks has contributed something to sense of place and sense of community across time. They've been very special. Says me, our committee did not do those potlucks, but we collaborated on one or two of them.
yes.
But you could take for next year if you wanted to. Because council is looking for how they're gonna run next year. So if this committee is interested, that is something you could choose to take on. I bet council would be very open to that.
Yep. And if we did take it on, I would be the point person of the council, and I would be here, hopefully, working with you great people. So it might work out nicely,
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's up to
We have yet to have a meeting with like more than half of our committee for a while, so it's like, what's the scope, you know? Who's, we have several programs in the, like, in the wings that might happen and we'll just, yeah, so far it's been a monthly meeting. And
Oh.
Sonia has done a lot and it's just a process, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to read off our last recommendation from this prior report. We can think about that and then maybe a little bit more to process and stuff. So number 10 is conduct a detailed assessment of the town of Orono's disability, accessibility, and safety that will identify opportunities for improvement, lead to expanded access, and plan for enforcement of access for those with disabilities. And I personally am not well informed or up to date on what has or hasn't been done in this space. And so for me, this lands on the like questions for staff page, but I also am curious if other folks remember things that I'm missing.
I'm with you on that, Sonia. I don't know of anything. I think this is something we could ask.
Yeah, I have a hazy recollection about an assessment relating to number of accessible parking spaces downtown at some point, but I would love to learn more, and I'm sure that might not be the only thing that has or could be considered here. So
When conversations were held on the Main Street idea or future project, did that come up again?
Yes, so one of the things that it got brought up, and I don't think I mentioned it, but I think it's really, really important to me because I do know people who struggle to use our sidewalks. With especially those who are in wheelchairs, like unsafe and impossible. And so that was mentioned, and it's something that I think is should be done if we can do that, because it's just not accessible. People who live in that direction, I know for sure cannot get to downtown. So that's something I can put on here that we can be working on.
awesome. All right. It is
Can
six
I
45
can I
and
speak to
yeah,
that
go
really
for it, Michael.
quickly?
Please.
So this is one that was particularly important to me as someone who is an ambulatory wheelchair user and regularly uses mobility aids, but also enjoys a walkable city and enjoys the kind of the general um, general uh, like pleasures that a accessible city brings. And I kind of wanted to highlight this concept that I had uh, been fortunate enough to kind of look a little bit into myself, just personally doing some research, and it's called the curb cut effect. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that at all. It's called the curb cut effect.
Okay.
And essentially, it's this idea that a curb cut, so essentially, it's like where usually you see the curb cuts out and slopes into the road, usually before like stop signs and street lights and things like that, before crosswalks. So essentially, the effect says that when things are put in place for folks with disabilities, it benefits not just people with disabilities, but it benefits the entire community. And it shows an image of somebody basically going down the curb cut in their wheelchair, but then you also see a delivery service worker using the curb cut to bring a dolly around to the back to the truck, and you see somebody who can't step down all that well. You see somebody with their dog who doesn't who just can go straight into the road, and it's kind of this idea that when we implement things that are accessible, they reach further than just the people who they are sort of at a baseline meant to reach. And I think that that's something that is a great kind of consideration for the way that we specifically focus on construction in Orono. Because I think that there's a lot of stuff where people think, oh, well, if we make it accessible, it has to be all this like special and specific and like yes, obviously there are special and specific things when it comes to making things ADA accessible and when you're making people's lives better. And those sacrifices are not something that should ever be like just dismissed because they are difficult. But there is so many different things that when you don't realize it, they're the curb cut effect. Because they're things when you put them in, they just end up benefiting the whole community. And I would really encourage like the town and everything like that when they're considering construction projects, really to think about how can we get to like if we're building something, can it become part of the curb cut effect? Can we make something that is good for people with disabilities, but then can we also make it so that it unintentionally sort of just benefits everybody?
That's a beautiful reflection. Thank you so much for sharing that, Michael.
Thank you.
Nicely done, little curb cut 101.
Yeah, I like it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. So, I'm mindful of time, and I know that several folks who are kind of the spearheaders for a couple of the other items on our agenda aren't here this evening, and so uh, I'm what I'm going to propose is that we actually skip ahead to the part where we do the executive session on selecting new members so that we could prioritize there are several applications for new members that we've received and we could prioritize getting a chance to discuss and officially welcome new members sooner rather than later and table other items until next meeting. But I want to check in with other folks to see if that is the best plan for tonight, or alternatively, if other folks, if there are other things on the agenda that we definitely want to talk about tonight, I might need to hand facilitation reins off to somebody else and bow out of the meeting early before the executive session because I do have a Passover observance to get to.
I could give a really speedy logbook update, like literally 2 minutes for you.
Okay.
The logbook is currently The logbook is currently live to, I believe, the members of the committee, as it's currently still a work in progress. It's been pretty much completely just updated within the last like 6 hours, so you can take a look at that. Anybody who is joining and needs the link for that, feel free to uh, pop into the email chain, which I'm sure we can kind of rope everybody in. Sonia is fantastic about that.
Yeah,
And so we can make sure that you guys get the link and you can look it over. Really, a lot of our next steps is just gathering possible media just to give it some like kind of finesse formatting wise, but structurally it has all of its pieces. The only things that we don't have on there really is some committee member blurbs and some blurbs on current and past projects. Otherwise, it is up to date and doing its thing.
cool. All right. And can we put more on that on the next meeting agenda and go on through to the next and final item?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. So for our next trick, if there are members who have applied to be on this committee but are not yet officially members, and I think I heard Summer's voice in the background. I actually can't see the folks who are on screen right now, which is a little inconvenient. But I would invite sort of members of the public to leave and folks who are officially members of this community to stay, and ask that whoever is doing the recording and the live stream stop the live stream, and we can go into executive session to so that we're
All that clear.
Yeah, that unfortunately,
The minutes, the agenda is publicly circulated, but
yes.
as minutes and actions and who decided what by what vote according to Robert's rules, that's not so much how this committee works. So we have organically gone along and who's ever present just do what they can do and move things forward. So if we take a vote tonight and it's me and Michael, well, oh well, hey, we got 2 thumbs, we can do 2 thumbs up.
I'm not officially part of this yet, right? So I will leave
So-
too.
Right.
All right.
So,
I just wanted to
yeah.
make.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
know. Actually, Matt, you're essential personnel because you're the new liaison, because I'm cycling off. So it would be really helpful if you could stay.
I'm here.
Thanks.